Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to get into Luke 7, and you know what? Let's just hop right into it. Now, when he concluded all of his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum, and a certain centurion servant who was dear to him was sick and ready to die. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that for one whom he should do this was deserving, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. Okay, so they're like, hey, yo, this guy, this centurion, has loved our nation, our people. Please just do this for him. Come on, man. When Jesus went with them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore, I did not even think myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I am also a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me, and say to one, Go, and he goes, and another one, Come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. The centurion has authority, and so does Jesus overall. I think that's what he's saying here. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him and turned around and said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. And those who were sent returning to the house found several well who had been sick. I think it's really interesting in the Bible how the amount of faith you've had is almost reciprocated. Like you see people who, that the amount of faith they have, they get back. So like the woman who just touched the edge of his garment because she knew if she did, she would be healed. And this man who says, I know how powerful you are. All you have to do is say it and it will be done. And then it was. Where other cases, Jesus has to go and see the person. It's a good reminder to me of how faithful, like where is the line of faith you need to have? Like where is the landmark? Or where is the point that you need to be? I need to be this guy's level of faith. Now it happened the day after that, he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and a large crowd. And when he came near the gate of the city, behold, a dead man was being carried out, and the only son to his mother. And she was a widow, and a large crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, Do not weep. Then he came and touched the open coffin, and those who carried him stood still. And he said, Young man, I say to you, arise. So he who was dead sat up and began to speak. And he presented him to his mother. Alright, so Jesus just healed a dead kid. Then fear came upon all, and they glorified God, saying, A great prophet has risen up among us, and God has visited his people. And this report about him went throughout all Judea and all the surrounding region. Then the disciples of John reported to him concerning all of these things. And John, calling 2 of his disciples to him, sent them to Jesus, saying, Are you the coming one, or do we look for another? This is interesting. John the Baptist is having a crisis of faith. He's in prison. I get why he would have a crisis of faith. When the men had come to him, they said, John the Baptist has sent us to you, saying, Are you the coming one, or do we look for another? In that very hour he cured many of the infirmities, afflictions, and evil spirits, and to many blind he gave sight. Jesus answered and said to them, Go, tell John the things you have seen and heard, that the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, and the dead are raised. The dead are raised. The poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he who is not offended because of me. There's a lot of good stuff there. When the messengers of John had departed, he began to speak to the multitudes concerning John. What did you go out into the wilderness and see? A reed shaken by the wind? So this is Jesus talking to everybody standing there about John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? But what did you go out and see? A man clothed in soft garments? Indeed, those who are gorgeously apparelled and live in luxury are in the king's courts. But what did you go out and see? A prophet? Yes. I say to you, more than a prophet, this is he of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before your face who will prepare your way before you. For I say to you, among those born of women there is not a greater prophet than John the Baptist. But he who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. And when all the people heard him, even the tax collectors justified God, having been baptized with the baptism of John. But the Pharisees and the lawyers rejected the will of God for themselves, not having been baptized by him. And the Lord said, To what then shall I liken the men of this generation, and what are they like? They are like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another, saying, We played the flute for you, and you do not dance. We mourned to you, and you do not weep. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you say, He has a demon. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking. You say, look, a glutton and a wine-bibber, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is justified by all her children. Woo! Jesus is getting on it because John the Baptist is having a crisis of faith, and then he's calling out all these people for what they're struggling with as well. And you don't get to play like you're not struggling. Jesus. John came with the truth, and he didn't drink, nor he did he eat bread. He lived in the wilderness wearing camel's hair stuff and eating locusts. Like, he was a strong dude. Then the Son of Man, Jesus, eats and drinks, and you call him a glutton and a drunkard, friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is justified by all her children. Meaning, true wisdom is vindicated by its consequences, what it produces, the fruit. What fruit do you have on your tree? Then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went to the Pharisee's house. Okay, and sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table of the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil, and stood at his feet behind him, weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the head of her hair. Hair of her head, you know what I'm trying to say. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the fragrant oil. Now, when the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself, saying, this man, if he were not a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. Oh, so they're saying Jesus should know this woman's a sinner and not really be letting her do what she's doing. And Jesus answered and said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. So he said, Teacher, say it. There was a certain creditor who had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii, and the other 50. And when they had nothing with which to repay, he freely forgave both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, I suppose the one who he forgave more. Oh, I see what he's doing here. And he said to him, You have rightly judged. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, Do you see this woman? I entered your house, you gave me no water for my feet, but she has washed my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair of her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman has not ceased to kiss my feet since the time I came in. But you did not anoint my head with oil, but this woman has anointed my feet with fragrant oil. Therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little. Then he said to her, Your sins are forgiven. And those who sat at the table with him began to say to themselves, Who is this who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Man. Oh, the big bomb being dropped right there. I mean, Jesus is saying that when I forgive sins, I forgive much, and then I get much in return, as far as like the level of gratitude. It's almost. So, he's calling out the Pharisees because the Pharisees think they don't have a lot of sin because they do all the external stuff correctly. They wear the right clothes, they say the right prayers, but they don't really believe in God. They don't have a personal relationship with God. It's almost like he's calling out the hypocrites of today as well. Like, Jesus is there for the people who have made the mistakes, because Lord knows I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of poor choices, and I still struggle every day. And that's what he's saying. That's who he's here for. And that's who's going to recognize him. Game recognizes game, and that's what's happening here when you have someone that's a sinner recognizing what Jesus can do for you. Then he said to the woman, Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. This whole thing's been about faith. This whole thing's about faith. Faith has saved you. I'm super excited. Tomorrow, I've got a friend coming to church. It should be super cool. I've known him for a long time. I'm hoping he makes it. I've already touched base with him today, so we're going to see. We're going to hope. We're going to be prayerful. Like, I've been praying for him, and I got to pray for some other folks too, actually, because they're going through some stuff. And always, I got to pray for myself and Jennifer and whatnot. But that's besides the point. Keep inviting people to church. Keep talking about Jesus. Keep spreading the gospel. Loganites, remember, always keep your corn on the cob. Logan, out!